Jai Shri Radhe. So Vaishnav Uncle Jai Shri Krishna. Day 52. Varta 27. Manik Chand. And continuing with the reading of the stories of the 252 Vaishnav disciples of Sri Gosaiji. Continuing from yesterday. Manik Chand was delighted to get ready and fulfill their requests. Haridas entered there as soon as he arrived, and his wife went straight to meet her daughter. Haridas put everything in its place and bathed into Seva. After meeting her daughter most blissfully, the mother bathed and went into her daughter's Seva temple and completed all the Seva. Then she brought her daughter back to where she was staying. They both bathed there and went to help Haridas with the cooking. They all served Sri Thakurji together, made the offerings and accepted them back as prasad at the right time. At this time, Haridas's daughter went into the temple to touch Sri Thakurji's lotus feet. He was very happy with her and said, "Oh, my dear girl, are you okay?" She replied, "You would have to say that. If I was not okay, how would you have come here? But are you okay? You never remembered me before. Now you come here and ask me if I am well. I know this is all cruelty on your part. However, you are obliged to do as Sri Gosaiji says, and so your cruelty will not cut it here." Hearing these hard words, Sri Thakurji smiled and stretched his lotus feet out towards her. She touched them, since it was the beloved Lord's wish that she did so. Haridas's daughter was such a great recipient of grace. Haridas then invited Manik Chand and all the others to partake of prasad at his place. They all came there and enjoyed the prasad very much. Then he took out all the items he had brought for the dowry and gave them out amongst all of those family members. Haridas remained in that village for some time. He then went on to Dwarka, where he had the holy site of Sri Ranchorlaji. Then he stopped again at Manik Chand's village on the way back, where he stayed for quite some time. Then Haridas set out with Manik Chand, his daughter and his wife, and Sri Thakurji, and returned to Varta. Haridas kept Manik Chand in his house for some time. He then presented the couple with lots of wealth and sent them happily off on their journey back home. Afterwards, they used to invite each other to go to their homes from time to time. Sometimes Haridas would just go along to see his daughter. They both kept very happy in this way. Bhav Prakash. Embodied souls need good association and connections. When a soul has the association of an accomplished Vaishnava, then Srinathji soon blesses and graces them. Their minds and hearts can be progressively uplifted. Thus concludes Varta 27, the story of Haridas's daughter, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and was an accomplished Vaishnava, although in reality there is no end to her tale. We now continue with Varta 28, the story of one Nagar Brahmin who lived in Bardanagar in Gujarat. Bhav Prakash. He is a devotee of Tamsi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Divya Ratna, whose body shines like a divine jewel. She belongs to the Pulindi group. She manifests from Gati Uttalika and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. He was born into a family of Nagar Brahmins in Gujarat. His father was a Shiva worshipper, to whom he was very attached. When the boy was 12 years old, he came into contact with a Vaishnava who lived nearby. He was a disciple of Sri Gosaiji and used to host devotional discourses at his home. The boy was always going there to listen to these. One day his father found out. He told his son, "Listen, son, we are a family of Shiva worship followers. He is our Lord. You should not listen to any other discourses." He repeated this at length. The son would not heed his words and continued to go to the Vaishnava's house. He loved to have the holy site of the Sri Thakurji there. If the Vaishnavas gave him prasad, he would eat, otherwise not. Thus the boy kept the company of the Vaishnava. One day the Brahmin beat his son a lot and said to him, "Hey, I have told you about this, but you do still not understand. Why are you denying our family's faith? You leave Shiva and go to have the sight of another god? Plus you eat their prasad. You associate with that Vaishnava." Then that Brahmin shoved him in a room and locked the door. He did not let him come out. He gave him food to eat, but he refused to eat or drink. 3 days passed in this way, and the boy fell motionless. The Brahmin became fearful that the boy might die, and so let him go. The boy sneaked secretly out of the house and went to the Vaishnava. He told him everything that had come to pass. I had to fast for 3 days, then I was let out. The Vaishnava fed him some Mahaprasad and gave him some water to drink. He told him to go home and stay there, not to come to his house, because otherwise there would be trouble. The boy did not heed his word. He still went every day to listen to the discourses. In this way he reached 20 years of age. Then his father died. Then the boy was able to openly go to the Vaishnava's house and listen to the discourses with great enthusiasm. One day he requested that Vaishnava to make him into a Vaishnava too. I have no restrictions now. The Vaishnava replied, Go to Gokul and become a Vaishnava and a disciple of Sri Gosaiji. I am his disciple. At this point in time, only Sri Gosaiji is a qualified guru, because Sri Govardhanaji depends on him. Any soul who takes shelter in him will be fulfilled. The boy asked the Vaishnava, Where might I find this Sri Gosaiji, Sri Vittalnaji? The Vaishnava informed him that he should go to Gokul. This Nagar Brahmin boy then pretended to go on a pilgrimage and proceeded to Gokul. Part 1. The Nagar Brahmin arrived in Gokul and caught sight of Sri Gosaji's unworldly form on Thakurani Ghat. He approached Sri Gosaji and requested him to accept him as a disciple. Sri Gosaji told him to bathe in Sri Yamunaji. He did so and came back to stand humbly before Sri Gosaji, who then graced him and took him as a disciple. He initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh. He then supplicated Sri Gosaji, All my family members are turned away from the true Lord, and they will make me suffer. Sri Gosaji presented him with a stone from the Sri Giriraji mountain and told him that if he was ever in difficulty, then he should bathe that stone with milk, fragrant oil and herbs, make the best offering that he could, and then ask him prayerfully for whatever was necessary. Bhav Prakash. Here we learn that if a Vaishnava should face a particular difficulty, then they can take refuge in Sri Govardhan and request solutions from him. The Lord himself is always engaged in eternal pastimes, and prayerful requests made to him are a botheration. Sri Govardhan is a form of Vishnu and is always ready to protect Vaishnavas. The story of how he protected Vraja is well known. Sri Thakurji regards Sri Govardhan as his family deity, and therefore Vaishnavas serve and worship him. The reason for bathing him in milk is that milk is the form of the nectar of bright devotion, and Sri Govardhan is known to be the foremost of all devotees of Sri Haridas Varya, and therefore always likes to bathe in that nectar. Thus, this act of worship is very dear to Sri Thakurji. Part 1 continued. Having completed his pilgrimage, that Nagar Brahmin returned home. He made fine offerings to his Sri Govardhan Shila, and then invited many Brahmins in his family to eat there. When they came to his home, he saw that he was wearing a tilak and tulsi neck beads. They asked him why, and then became angry and wanted to leave. He asked them, Why are you leaving? They all accused him of having given up on Shiva and worn those Vaishnava neck beads, and they would therefore not eat with him. He said to them, In a little while I will give you the answer to this accusation. He bathed his Sri Govardhan Shilaji in milk and massaged him in fragrant herbs and oils, made a nice offering to him, then bowed down and said, O Maharaj, my reputation is in your hands. Otherwise this clan of corrupt Nagar Brahmins will persecute me. Sri Govardhan spoke to him and said, They are not worthy of having my prasad. However, I will show them my power. He called all the demigods to his presence. In a short while they all began to arrive there in their aerial cars and hovered there just to enjoy the fragrance of the prasad. They all joined their hands in humble appreciation. Whilst all those Brahmins were looking on, they all ascended to heaven. All of those Brahmins witnessed Sri Govardhan's power. They all fell at the feet of the initiated Brahmin, who presented them all with uncooked supplies. Many of them, who were actually divine souls, henceforth became Vaishnavas. Thus concludes Varta 28, the story of the Nagar Brahmin, who was a recipient of Sri Gosaji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava, although in reality there is no end to his tale. Thus concludes Varta 28. It concludes the reading for today, and we will continue tomorrow with Varta 29, the story of one Sanadya Brahmin from Gujarat. Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna. Shri Govardhanaji ki Jai Ho. Jai Jai Shri Radhe.